Hey ladies, it's me, Ashley Shepherd, and I am so excited to come to you and to review chapters 3 and 4. And I don't know about you, but I have underlined like every single sentence in these last two chapters. So chapter 3 is the fear of being found out, and then chapter 4 is the fear of failure. And so many times in these two chapters did I get my little note card out and write down, oh, wow, like I definitely have experienced a similar thing or definitely have feared that. So, that's something that I do recommend. Just get a separate notebook or note cards and just write things that the Lord may bring to your heart and to your mind that is something that you need help overcoming or that is something that you have dealt with. And just kind of leaning on Him as He reveals those things to you and writing it down just to kind of keep, to pay attention to what He's trying to tell you. So I love chapter 3, and I'm just going to dive right in. And I'm going to just highlight kind of my favorites, but also kind of share some personal experiences with you. And I just want you to get real with yourself, because I've gotten real with myself, and I'll be honest, like it's hurt a little bit to just think that, wow, like I've really thought those things, and the way that she really writes and words things, it really puts in perspective for me. So I love the story at the very beginning of chapter 3 of, the woman that touches Jesus's cloak, and just that fear of, like I can do it without anybody noticing. And then I can just imagine Jesus turning around and asking that question, and just having that, anxiety, knowing that, she has these things wrong with her and she doesn't want anyone to know. But of course we know what happens, and He heals her because of her faith. Her faith that she could just touch the cloth and she would be healed. And He saw her, He saw her. And my personal experience with this is, for so many years, probably for about 3.5 to 4 years, I was that girl. I didn't have necessarily a disorder or, disease or anything like that. But what I did have was I was really in a bad depression. I had gained a lot of weight. I had suffered some postpartum depression, and I just wanted to be invisible. I didn't want to leave my house, and my husband traveled at the time, so he was a corporate pilot. So he had to, he had to be gone. That's how we made our money and how I was able to stay home with our boys. And I remember he would call from a trip, and he's like, what are you and the boys doing? And I'd be like, oh, it's raining outside. Or, I would make every excuse I could to not have to go somewhere, or, to have to interact with people. Like I just didn't want people to know how much weight I had gained. I wanted to stay invisible. I didn't want people to notice me. I had these bangs, and I would cover my bangs to here. They looked terrible, and definitely some 1992 bangs going on. But I tried to hide myself. When I would walk into church, I'd always have my head down. I felt miserable in a lot of different ways in my life. And I just wanted to stay that way. And I can just seeing that description of the woman having that hope. If I could just run and touch the cloak, if I could just touch that hem, she really didn't want to be noticed. She just wanted to be healed, right? But in the noticing, she was healed. By Him looking her in the eye and thanking her for her faith, He healed her by noticing her. That's something that the Lord did for me. And one really cool story is I was pregnant with Levi, with my second, and I had my friend Amber Brock had invited me to a MOPS group, Mothers of Preschoolers, at my church. If you have a MOPS group in your area, go online and look for one, because it was the biggest blessing in my life. And I walked into this MOPS group, and I'll never forget my friend Adrienne Jones. And I think she had one kid running around, another kid she was trying to breastfeed, and she was doing registration of the women coming in. And I kept thinking, wow, like this is really cool. Like, all these moms, and we got in little small groups. And as we were chatting, I realized that I was fixing to have my second son, and I was worried about raising boys. And all these women were raising boys at the time. And so what happened is I gave that fear a community with MOPS. And that was really what God used, that and used those women in my life, and the pastor's wife who came and would sit with me at my house for hours and just talk to me. I had someone to talk to. And, my pastor's wife, Nancy, was kind of like what Jesus was. I mean, she's noticed me, and she, had conversations with me, and she loved me where I was at. So, I'm really transparent about that time in my life, because I don't feel like we're called to be invisible. I don't feel like we should live in a fear of being found out. Angie Smith goes on to tell the story of her friend who was living the lie, and where she looked like Martha Stewart on the outside. On the inside of her four walls, she dealt with anger to the point where she was lashing out and throwing things. And when she finally let it out, and Angie got to notice that part of her, things started to change. So I hope you're seeing a trend in that. But on page 54, I love where she talks about, for so many of us, we can get so caught up in what we think people are seeing in us that we lose sight of who we are. And I guess for me, I was always so worried about what people would think about me when they saw just, they physically saw how much gain I weighed, or how much weight I had gained. They, when they talked to me, I would have to try to be happy. I would have to plaster a smile on my face when I didn't really feel happy inside. And I always struggled with that too. I always felt like I was just a fake and a phony, because nobody knew what was going on with me. But on page 55, Angie says, the labels we create and dwell on for each other are killing our chance for a genuine community, and we are missing the best part of each other. And I believe that beautifully designed, the reason why God brought us all together is to break that mold. To break that mold of, I don't have to if I say something on that page of beautifully designed, then I know I'm not going to be judged for it, because I believe we're all in the fight together to bring out these fears, to grow closer to Jesus, to grow our relationship, right? So I truly believe that we are breaking the mold for that. And, being godly doesn't mean being perfect. Thankfully, I had that realization when I joined that MOPS group, that so many women were just like me, and they were suffering from postpartum depression. And once we were chatting and having conversations, I just realized that, I'm missing out on the things that God created me for, because I'm so consumed with how I feel, or what other people may be thinking about me, when I'm out in town. But just that realization of, I am meant for more than this, and just really giving it a community. So if you have that fear, or maybe you're wearing a mask, maybe you wear a mask every single day, kind of like the mom who wanted to be Susie Homemaker, but behind closed doors, she really suffered. We don't have to suffer in silence. The Lord brought this community for all of us for a purpose, and I believe that we need to take advantage of that. And so I'm very thankful that the ladies at the MOPS group really helped just be that community for me to talk to and to pray with. And I was, God used that to overcome a lot. And there's days I still struggle. Today it was a snowy day, and I wouldn't have minded just to kind of hide in my room and read a book and not talk to anybody today. I would have loved that. But I know I'm called to more. I've got two beautiful, healthy boys I got to play with outside. Neighbors came over, they're asleep in the next room, and just what a beautiful day just to be with family and to not miss out on that. And I don't want to miss out on things like that. So, chapter 4, I want to transition to the fear of failure. And this is another thing that I struggle with. Probably my most favorite quote, and I will be very surprised if, I don't know, you can see my book here, like all of my little underlines. I will be very surprised if there is a better quote than this right here in the whole book when it comes to fear of failures. Sometimes the fear of failure steals the beauty we were meant to create. Sometimes the fear of failure steals the beauty we were meant to create. All of those fears that I struggled with of going out in public and wondering what people were going to think. I would also have that fear of failure. I wouldn't go and do things with my husband. Like he would want to go ride bikes over at Cades Cove, or let's go do this hike, or let's go do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be good at that. I'm going to fail at that. And so I just wouldn't do it. I mean, I would miss out on so many memories with my family because of that. But what if the Lord wanted me to go on that trip because he wanted me, to talk to someone, or he had someone there to encourage me that day, but I missed out on it in fear, and I missed out on the beauty that we were meant to create because of that fear of failure. I'll tell you, I wrote that down on a little card, and I have it in my bathroom, and I want to read it every single morning. I think that is one of the most powerful statements that she has used, and I love the way that she talks about her dad and how he wouldn't paint because he just wanted to read his books first and make sure it was perfect. And she finally just said, Dad, you're painting because you're afraid it's not going to be perfect. So how many times, have God given you a talent or has given you something to do and you're just like, I don't know, what if it's not perfect? I'll never forget when we were setting up this Facebook page to gather our 100 women to do the Bible study in September, which ended up being 9,000 women. I remember sitting down and writing my first blog article and getting it out there, and just that cursor just kind of staring at me in the face, like, write something. And I remember, talking to one of my friends saying, I've typed some things, I've deleted it, I've read it over. I can't hit submit. I can't hit submit. And she said, you know what? It doesn't have to be perfect. Just be you. You can't fail at being you. There is not another Ashley Shepherd out there. God created me specifically for something. And even he's going to use my failures. And I love when she starts talking about that on page 71, where she starts talking about Moses's calling and how, he had that stutter and he was out to lead all these people and to speak, and he didn't want to do it. I love that how when he says you're going to go to, for Pharaoh to release the Israelites, but he's not going to release them, but I just need you to go do it anyway. And how Angie describes, you think, oh, is God setting him up for failure? What's he doing? But you see, the expectations, the measure of his success was not on the action of Pharaoh. The measure of Moses' success was the obedience of listening to Christ. So if God is calling us to do something, whether it's to set up an online Bible study or talk to your coworker that sits 2 seats down that doesn't know about Jesus, or invite someone to church, or pick up the phone and encourage someone that's been sick, or make a meal for someone down the street that needs it, is God calling you to certain things, not because you're so equipped. He's not saying, oh, you are the perfect person to go down into some theology and tell that person about Jesus. No, he's not. He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. He will give you the words to say to that person. He will put those people in your mind that you need to text to encourage. He will, as long as you hit send and start that Facebook page, he will send women to you. He has gathered 14,000 women on this page that Jamie and I created. He did that. God did that. And it's not because Jamie and I are equipped by any means, or we're prepared, right? Our videos are a hot mess. I haven't even showered today. And this was the first time I actually put deodorant and clothes on, was just for this video, and it's 11 o'clock at night. Guys, we are not equipped for this. And you know how many times I've had that fear rise up in me, even right before I hit record. I'm really not sure what I'm going to say. What if it doesn't flow? What if this doesn't touch every single woman that's watching? That's okay. Because God has called me to this, and he will use the good things about it, the bad things that I may fail at. He's going to use my failures just like he did with Moses, right? And I love that. What I saw as a character flaw, God saw as potential. What I perceived as weakness was going to be my glorified gift. What I was sure was failure was actually the heart of my success. You see, Angie never thought that she would be on stage speaking. Just like when I would hide in my house and wouldn't go out and make memories with my kids, or didn't even want to go to church and would hide my face, here I am a short 3.5 years later, going from being invisible to leading the masses. So I don't know where you're at right now. Maybe you're in the invisible stage, or maybe you're in the stage of where you're starting to grow and to learn, and he's starting to give you these little things to be obedient towards. But what are you measuring your success by? Are you measuring your success by how perfect you're being? Or are you preparing way too much to be perfect, and you're preparing so much you're missing, and you're not even doing what God's called you to do, because sometimes you have to take a risk and step out in faith, right? So also on page 71, when Moses had to make that decision to be used by him, I love when, Jesus says to him, who has made man's mouth? He was he didn't think he could, lead all those people with his speech impediment. But guess what? God said, but who has made man's mouth? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak. You see, when Jamie and I hit submit, and we made this page for this ministry, we weren't prepared. We had no idea, right? Just the same as Moses. It's a different scenario, but same heart, right? That heart just to be obedient regardless of that fear of failing or that fear of succeeding. But almost like, if I say yes to this, it doesn't matter because I'm in God's will. So if things go downhill fast, it's going downhill fast for a purpose, and I'm going to make it count for God's glory. And that is the perspective that we need to have. I love on page 73, define your failure. And she says it right here. You didn't fail me. You did what I asked you to do. And just because it didn't work out the way you wanted doesn't mean it surprised me. Now go, get ready for what's next, because I'm not done with you. And that's what Jesus says to Moses when he says, well, Pharaoh's not letting the Israelites go. You didn't fail me. I knew that was going to happen. Now go, do what's next. I'm not done with you. So sometimes, we think when we fail at something, that's the end of it. Well, that's just the beginning of God using you and you having that perspective of obedience. And I can't tell you, just me having, I have so many things underlined. I wish I could literally just almost read this book to you word for word. She goes on to talk about Gideon, of course, and the story of Gideon, and this little guy who led an army of supposed to be 3,000 or 32,000, but then God cut it to 300 men, and he was so obedient from day one. I love that. And I want to end with this. He used Moses, who had a speech impediment. He noticed the lady that had all those things wrong with him, and he healed her. He let Gideon, he told Gideon, I want you to lead these men, and you're going to win. You're going to be victorious, but I'm calling you. Well, why do you think God healed the woman who wanted to be invisible? Why do you think he called Moses, who never felt fully equipped to speak? Why do you think he called Gideon, who was this little guy, the smallest of the whole family? Why did he choose him to win this battle? I believe that God chose men like Gideon to teach us that we don't win because of our superior intellect or our incredible ability, but rather the favor of God, which rests on those who trust him. So why don't we take that weight of responsibility that we put on our shoulders, that we have to be perfect? Because to be godly does not mean to be perfect. The only perfect one is Jesus. To be godly is just to be obedient. We put so much pressure on ourselves, whether it's to be the perfect wife, perfect spouse, perfect daughter, perfect mother, perfect employee, perfect. I have pressures of, on myself so many times with my job, and pressures that I put on myself with being a mom. Sometimes I look at my husband and I'm like, I can't even cook. You do the laundry half the time. I look at him all the time. I'm like, I just burnt popcorn. Like, how do you burn popcorn? I did that tonight. Like, how does that even happen? Like, I can ruin popcorn, right? And And sometimes I look at them and I'm just like, man, like I'm a hot mess. But when I was reading through this, even tonight, in my crazy bun and my oversized sweatshirt and my fuzzy slippers, I feel God gently reminding me and wanting me to remind you that He loves us, and our only job is to be obedient and to trust Him. And Angie ends chapter 4 by going over a prayer. We can't be obedient unless we don't know what God is telling us. And how do we know what God specifically tells each of us? Well, we have to be in the Word. We got to read the Bible. We've got to pray. And this last paragraph I want to read to you right before the prayer on page 81. I just want to read it to you because I think it wraps it up perfectly. But I hope you feel a lot lighter after this video, and you thank the Lord that He sees us and that we're not invisible, because He beautifully designed you to go out and just to be obedient and to trust Him. And it's different for everybody. And yes, those fears still may come up, the fears of wanting to be invisible or the fears of failure. These fears never go away, but I can tell you this. We can sit at Jesus' feet and we can read His Word and we can talk to Him just like we talk to each other every single day. And we can ask God to take those fears away and give you your heart that gentle reminder that my measure of success is not being perfect or it not being, the best, me not being the best at something, but my measure of success is me saying yes to what the Lord has for my life. So on page 81, Angie says, "And each day the Lord gives us, let us become consumed with the obedient pursuit instead of the perceived victory." Let us pursue Jesus. Let that all be you worry about. Don't worry about anything else. Let us become exhausted as we seek the face of a God who delights in giving us power through our weakness. Let us reevaluate failure in light of the gracious God who calls us in the same breath He called Moses and Gideon. Let us reevaluate failure in the light of a gracious God who calls us in the same breath He called Moses and Gideon. Maybe Jesus didn't come down in a cloud, or maybe Jesus didn't audibly tell us or do those things like Moses and Gideon. But we have the same Jesus, and we have the same access to the Almighty, to the one who created us, just like Moses and Gideon. And that is through His Word, through the Bible, through prayer. So just make that mental decision to combat that fear of failure, that fear of just wanting to be invisible, with the excitement of, regardless of the fear, I'm going to be obedient. And even in the midst of it, I'm going to punch fear in the face and I'm going to be obedient. I love each of you. And I know so many of you are so excited to hear from Angie Smith herself on April 2nd. Just so you know, we will be launching the site, the link where you can register. We will be linking that on February 1st. Okay, so that is a week from Monday. We will have everything done and the link will be live for you to register your seat. I will post it on February 1st on the Beautifully Designed page for you first to register before we kind of get it out in the local churches around the area. So just be excited. I want to make sure that that you understand this night is for you. It's a night of worship. We're going to have amazing surprises for you. I want to hug your neck. Jamie wants to hug your neck. But we want to bring this community together, and we want to get poured into by this amazing author who God has gifted of words and transparency, and I love her heart, and I know you do too. So April 2nd, save the date, make plans, get a sitter, get your plane ticket, get in your car, whatever you have to do to come to this beautifully designed night of worship for you on April 2nd. Like I said, you can register starting on February 1st. I will post the link then. I love each of you. You'll get to see Jamie next week, and she will go over chapters 5 and 6. I will also start a discussion thread so we can kind of start talking about, what the Lord has shown you these last 2 chapters. So you guys be blessed.